So, can you hear me? Yeah, good. I'm going to move around a little bit. I don't know if the camera's move or not, but I will. I just want to say a big thank you to the Globes for inviting us to be here. I can spend a lot of time traveling around the world, and I've been very much looking forward to this trip. The Israeli market for us is actually a really exciting one. There's lots of innovation. There's lots of technology hubs and R&D departments here. And it's a tremendous user base for us. So I'll go through some of the numbers, but I just want to say a big thank you. So my task for the next 20 minutes is to try and give you a flavor of the company, how we look at the world from a Facebook perspective, how we innovate, the culture within the organization, and hopefully at the end of that, at the end of 20 minutes, you'll have that. I will ask you to do one thing, and that is for the disbelievers in the audience, and there might be a few, I'd like to just, for 30 minutes, take your hat off, take the way we logically think about things, and think differently, open our minds, because we do believe the world has fundamentally changed, and that we're seeing an acceleration in that, and if we don't embrace it and understand what that means for our businesses, we can quickly find ourselves left behind. It is changing. You'll hear this over and over again. It probably gets tiring after a while, but the user has more control now than they've ever had. We're not going back to a world where brands control their brand message anymore. We're in a place where brands can suggest, they can introduce brand messages, but at the end of the day, your brand is controlled by, and the success of the brand will be controlled by consumers. How we understand that, how we embrace that, and how we apply that will have immediate, medium, and long-term impact on our business. I'm going to build this. So I grew up in the world on the left. Right? So I'm probably one of the oldest people at Facebook by years, probably by 15 or 20 years. I grew up before the internet. I grew up when I wanted to go to the cinema to see a movie, I went to a newspaper to find out where it was playing. Right? When I wanted to find something to buy, if I wanted to know where the local hardware store was, I actually went to a book and looked for the telephone number and the address. The world's changed, right? It didn't happen overnight. It's taken the last 12, 15 years, but it's been a fundamental movement towards where we are today. From the days where Jerry Yang and David Filo created Yahoo, and it was as simple as, here's a website that tells you the cool websites that we've found. That was Yahoo. All the way through to the algorithmic search business, that's been certainly driven the last few years by Google and by Microsoft with Bing, through to user-generated content, to where we are today. And we coined this phrase discovery, because discovery is what we're talking about. Where we find information about local news, about our sports teams, about politicians, anything we find, we're now finding through the concept of discovery, and we're finding it through our friends and family. They're the most important influencers in our lives. It's not just Facebook. Right? So there's lots of other players in this space. There are Twitters, there's Flickr, there's YouTube, there's LinkedIn for professional. Facebook happens to be one of the players. And I can give you a perspective on Facebook. I can't tell you how the other people look at this. I can just introduce you to our company. At the end of the day, it comes down to people. I spend lots of time in boardrooms around the world having lots of great conversations about what we're going to do and these great applications, how we're going to use technology to drive our businesses, and research and consumer insights. All of these things are really important, but we boil it down to a really simple concept. On Facebook, it is a very, very, very intimate environment. It is two friends interacting with each other. If you don't understand how to engage and introduce yourself, whether you're a government, a brand, a politician, a charity, if you don't understand what role you play in that relationship right there, you will fail. It's as fundamental as that. So this is, you can't avoid Mark anywhere in the world these days, right? So this is Mark Zuckerberg. And Mark is 26 years old. I first met Mark when he was 21, when he interviewed me for my job, and I thought I was interviewing him. We had 20 million users at the time. We were primarily only in America, and I was living in London, and I was being asked to help internationalize the company. Mark Zuckerberg thinks differently about the world. Mark filters the world differently than you and I do. He's one of the most passionate and impressive people I've ever met. He's a true prodigy. And a lot of people don't get to know that because Mark's also a very humble person. He doesn't spend a lot of time. He wouldn't be comfortable standing here in front of you. There's a movie that's come out recently. There's lots of speculation about how true that movie is. I haven't seen the movie. Mark has, and he smiles about it. He says, it's Hollywood, right? I'm going to let Mark speak to you for a second. So there's a guy that works with Mark by the name of Chris Cox, and he runs our product team. And Mark and Chris have a very, very specific idea of the role that Facebook plays in the world, and I'm going to let them introduce it to you.
What's the point? At any given point in time, there are the trends that are really shaping society. I mean, we just think that the world is better off when everyone has a voice.
Facebook is giving the power of distribution to every single person. No longer can people go make a law that can constrain the flow of ideas.
And our idea has always been that the real way to organize the world's information is people. And that's this completely bottom-up way of establishing for the whole world, like, what is the map of human connections?
We've always talked about this as a movement, not as a website. The reason why we built a company is because I think a company is by far the best way to get the best people together and align their incentives around doing something great. We're kind of in the sweet spot now, and will be for the next few years, where the company is large enough that there's room for people to come in and experiment with things and have a lot of leverage in what they do. And it's also not so large that you're going to get lost in that, right? We build a lot of tools that make it so that engineers can have low friction for getting started in an idea, can get machines if they want to test something out, have a good environment to build things. We push code every single night. So it's really a magical time for the company, and a lot of great people are joining now because of that. We are way closer to the beginning of this than the end, and this is the type of thing that can get 1 billion people using it. And decisions that we make now and people who are joining now are really getting in at the ground floor in terms of shaping the direction that this is going to go in.
So it's really amazing to think that Mark believes we're just at the beginning. With over 500 million users around the world, and we call them active users. And an active user, the definition, is someone who has a Facebook account, has logged into the account, and taken an action in the last month. Over 50% of those users come back every single day, which is an unheard of number on a relative basis versus traditional websites. And we have over 200 million of those folks are joining us on a mobile, on a handset and a device. We believe that building a company today is different. So when I helped Yahoo for a number of years, if we wanted to enter a new market, if we wanted to enter the French market because it's a big, very robust internet market for advertising, we would put 100 people into the market. We'd have a general manager, a bunch of product teams, we'd have functional heads, salespeople, we'd have a P&L, and then we'd basically set up a company, and then we'd compete. When Facebook decided to internationalize the company 3 years ago, Mark said, we're not going to do it that way. He said, how do we use technology and how do we use community to make ourselves a global company? And rather than focusing on geographic locations, we focused on language. And we did something that's never been done before. We built an application, a translation application, that essentially allowed people to come in and to translate the site for us. And I can't explain the sophistication of it, but it was a voting mechanism that basically had learning in it, and over time, it allowed us to get very, very good, to the point we believe our translation is better than we've done through academic resources. We translated Spanish, the first language we tested with this application, in about a month. We translated into German, our second language, in 2 weeks. And we translated into French in 24 hours. And now we're in 90 languages around the world. reaching around 98% of the world's population. It's a different way of building a business. Our 2,000 employees as a company are dwarfed in comparison to someone like a Google with 25,000 employees. We think differently about how we use technology to build. We really look at the world in three key constituents. We have our users, our consumers, the people around the world that are using Facebook. We have what we call developers. And developers are the folks that build applications on top of the social graph, on top of Facebook. And then we have our marketers, our advertisers, the people that are trying to communicate with these audiences. And we look at them in very distinct and separate ways, but the one common theme is that everything's got to be efficient, effectiveness, and scalable. Because we don't build for local markets, we build for global. Local markets will customize themselves through language and through content based on the developer community. So with users, we spend an awful lot of time allowing people to have a real comfort and confidence that they can be their real selves on Facebook. It's around privacy. It's around connections. It's around sharing. How do we allow people to connect with people they want to connect with, and only the people they want to connect with, and share the kind of information that they want to share? If I want to share the photos from my night out the other night, I might not want to share those photos with everybody. I only want to share the photos with the people I was out that evening with. Or if I have pictures from when I'm with my son on the weekend, I might not want everybody to see those pictures. Who I share every piece of information with, status updates, photos, comments, giving people tools and functionality to do that is core to allowing them to control their experience and have confidence with their experience on Facebook. It's real people, right? It's authenticity. 3 years ago, I would never have put my mobile phone number on the internet. It just wouldn't have happened. And I'm an early adopter, right? The theory was if you put your mobile phone number on the internet, something bad would happen to you. Right? Your identity would be stolen immediately. Your bank account would get emptied. Now there's 500 million people around the world sharing real information. I am who I am. And if I try to pretend to be something I'm not, if I were to try to pretend to be 32 years old and a good dancer, my friends would challenge me. They'd say, you're not 32 and you're not a good dancer, right? That is Facebook. It's authentic relationships, which has enormous value for individuals and for people that are trying to interact with those individuals. It is about the news feed, right? The news feed is your personal newspaper. It's where people spend most of their time. It's when the people get up in the morning, the first thing they look at when they go on the internet is their news feed. What are my friends doing now? Who is doing what? And it's engineered for your individual needs. You can click in and out of any language in the world if you want to. The sophistication and engineering requirements to do this are almost unimaginable. It's just never been done to be able to click in and out, to be able to mirror and have everybody in the world experience the exact same thing. There are lots of connections going on. These numbers are big, big numbers. When you start putting billions, not millions, billions of connections. Billions of status updates, billions of photos. I read the other day that the world's largest photo sharing site, Flickr, had just reached its 5 billionth photo. We do 5 billion photos a month, right? Our photo product historically has actually been a really poor one. It's a bad one. The quality hasn't been that good. It's not high def. It doesn't have red eye removal. It doesn't allow you to adjust or crop or change. Does anybody want to guess why it became so popular? Tagging. Simple concept. Socialized. You socialize photo sharing, and it becomes the biggest thing on the web. The paradigm's changed. People are spending more and more time in social environments. They're shifting away from traditional portals where you used to find information and discover things, and you're discovering things through your friends and family. earlier this year, a pretty dramatic thing happened. It used to be everything you found on the internet you found through search. And earlier this year, it changed. All of a sudden, the top driver of traffic to news sites globally is a social network. The top driver of traffic to portals now is Facebook. The top driver of traffic to YouTube is Facebook. People are finding information, they're finding videos, they're finding everything they need from their friends and family. It is fundamentally changing the way we have to think about discovery and how information flows. So we built the developer community, well, Mark did, about the same time I joined the company. At the time, when I was working for Yahoo, there were no open APIs. Right? You roll back the time 36 months, the world was closed. In my former employer and other internet companies, the concept was you built your product, you built your channel, you captured all the information, you monetized it. That was the way you built a business. And then this kid, who at the time was 21 years old, says, that's not the way we're going to build a business. We're going to open up our platform to anybody that wants to build on top of it. And we're going to do it for free. We were scratching our heads. It didn't make sense. His theory was, what in the world does a 24-year-old kid from Stanford who's writing code for Facebook know about culture in Istanbul? How can we build products that are going to be unique to local audiences, which is what developers are. They're local players building for local audiences. How can we do that with any meaningful scale without hiring 10,000 engineers? We thought about the world differently, and now everybody's open. Open APIs is something that you can't walk out of a boardroom without hearing. It didn't exist a while ago. Does anybody know what this is? Anybody want to actually admit they play Farmville? No. Oh, one person. Okay, the believers are starting to raise their hands. So the thought that anybody would want to actually plant crops and then harvest those crops and do that for hours a day. Hours a day. I walked onto my sales floor. I was back in London about 2 years ago. And literally every single monitor at 8:30 in the morning had Farmville open. Half an hour later, they still had Farmville open. It's a phenomenon that took place. It did it because it's social. Zynga has figured out how to socialize gaming. There are now companies worth billions and billions of dollars that are built in the back of the social graph. Disney, EA, all the big gaming companies are trying to figure out how do we socialize our business now? How do we socialize consoles? Because playing against your friends, wherever they are, is a whole lot more fun than playing against strangers or playing against the computer. For brands, for people trying to reach, we have to fundamentally think about what is the value we're going to bring, right? And so Mark is obsessed with this. The idea of just broadcasting into an environment and trying to interrupt the user experience, traditional banner advertising, we just don't believe in fundamentally. We believe that brands play an enormous role in this. You know, who I am as a person is a combination of my friends, my family, the kind of running shoes I wear, the kind of car I drive, the kind of beer I drink, the kind of cereal I eat. Those are all things that are the politicians I follow, my religious beliefs. These are all part of who I am. They play a role in my life. They play a role in my social graph, but they should not be broadcast. They should not be shouted into it. Anybody want to know? Anybody guess what this is? Oh, very good. The first internet banner, and it was for AT&T. It looks an awful lot like we're still using. For the most innovative media in history, we're still trying to talk to people the same way as we did 15 years ago. They might be a little bit better targeted, might be some rich media, don't get me wrong, and in some environments they're fine, in Facebook they're not. Banners don't have a role in Facebook. We took them out, we walked away from them about 1.5 years ago, and it's the best thing we've ever done for our business and for our advertisers around the world. It is about dialogue. It was mentioned earlier, it's about listening. It's about responding. It's about having the difficult conversations. It's about wanting to know what your consumers think about your brand, honestly, versus what a group of 12 people tell you behind a panel of glass. We built a platform to connect. The platform was not built to broadcast. We've built a publishing platform called Facebook Pages. It allows any brand in the world to have a presence on Facebook in a similar manner that a user would, and to connect with people, and to publish to them, and to listen to them, and to socialize themselves through the social graph. It was built to do that. It's not a microsite that sits somewhere else and you expect people to go to. That's not scalable for us. To build microsites require thousands of engineers and web developers all over the world. It's a free platform. The ads platform that we built is designed to connect and engage. It's designed to say, what are people already doing on Facebook? And how do we include or how do we introduce brands into that? Not how do we interrupt what they're doing and try to get them to go do something because that's what I, as a brand, want them to do. It's around innovating. How do we allow the development community? How do we allow agencies? How do we allow brands to be creative? That's the power. That's the innovation. That's what makes a brand become viral. It's around creating, again, going back, Mark doesn't wake up every morning and think to himself, how can I do it like we used to do it? How do I fit into that model? We wake up every day and say, how do we disrupt that model if we have to make it better for our users and for our other constituents, our developers and our advertisers? How do we build advertising units, right, that allow brands to interact with users? We're not trying to interrupt them. We're trying to get them in the bottom right corner. You know, Cobra Beer is saying to people, what kind of curry are you? They're not saying we're a good beer to have with curry. It's a slight adjustment, but it's a significant one. It's asking the question and allowing people to interact with it, allowing people to socialize it. It's around building large-scale communities. Starbucks now has over 16 million people that are connected to its brand. Starbucks doesn't try and sell people coffee. They talk about their association with breast cancer awareness. They talk about fair trade. They talk about their coffee growers in Africa. They might introduce a new flavored coffee at some point for a seasonal activity or a promotion, but it's not designed to try and push brands onto people. Coca-Cola has actually overtaken Starbucks as the largest, and Disney recently announced, not with us, they did it on their own, they've got over 100 million connections now on their pages on Facebook. These are big brands that are building community. It's around shifting the model from pure broadcast models to what some people coin bought, owned, and earned, organic. Right? Remember the early days of the internet? If you walked to any boardroom, CEO would go, do we have a website? And the head of marketing would go, yep, we got a website. Well, how many people go to it? Not many. Right? How much did you spend? A lot of money. How do we measure it? Have to be there. Right? How are people going to find it? Oh, they'll find it. Right? It's a website. That was the way we thought about the world. Facebook's doing something very similar. People are saying, okay, we're building a presence. How do we find it? Do they find it through the social graph? Sure they do. Is that a powerful way for brands to be discovered? Sure they are. But they also have to advertise. You have to spend money. So the bought, owned, and earned, we spend a lot of time with big brands going through, and with politicians and with governments, a lot of time with charities, helping them understand how to best leverage this platform to accomplish their goals and objectives. So going forward, for us, there's a couple core areas. Mobility, devices, of every shape and form. We all know this. Facebook, as Mark referenced earlier, it was a company because he felt it was the best way to aggregate a bunch of people on a common mission. It's a website because it was the easiest thing to do 4 years ago. He looks at it much less that way. Facebook is now on your mobile phone, it's on your iPad, it's in your car on GPS systems, it's going to be on your cable top box. Everything can benefit from being social. It's around distribution of our platform to allow other websites. Right now, Yahoo, one of the largest portals in the world, leverages Facebook's social elements throughout its website to try and socialize itself. We help facilitate that. They don't pay us to do that. We do it because we think it's good. We want the world to be social. It's about introducing new products like things such as Facebook Places, which allows you to check in, Facebook Credits, which is a universal payment platform that we're exploring right now. The only way we'll enter something is if we can bring value into the equation. We don't wake up every morning and say, how do we monetize our audience? We just don't do it. We wake up in the morning and say, how can we provide value to our users? And if we can do that, we try and build something at a scalable level to do it. That's kind of our theory. That's the way we approach the world. I tried to stay out of some of the details because I thought that'd be a little too much just because of the size of the group. But hopefully that gives you a flavor of Facebook. Again, we want to say really big thank you for the Globes for allowing us to be here and to present to you guys. And I hope you have a good session with the panel.